Wired.com presents The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. And here is your host, David Barr Kirtley.
Hello, and welcome to episode 321 of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. Our guest today is Garry Kasparov. For 20 years, he was the top-ranked chess player in the world, and his 1997 match against the IBM supercomputer Deep Blue made international headlines. He's also the chairman of the Human Rights Foundation and co-founder of the Kasparov Chess Foundation. And we'll be speaking with him today about his books Deep Thinking, Where Machine Intelligence Ends and Human Creativity Begins, and Winter is Coming, Why Vladimir Putin and the Enemies of the Free World Must Be Stopped. And now, here's our interview with Garry Kasparov. All right, so we're here with Garry Kasparov. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, so when I was growing up, my parents both worked at the IBM facility in Yorktown Heights where Deep Blue was developed. So I really heard a lot about that growing up, and I thought I really knew the story. But then reading your book made me realize that there was all this stuff going on behind the scenes that I had no idea about. And I was just wondering, do you just look back on that now and think how crazy that was, how much stuff was going on behind the scenes?
Look, it was more than 20 years ago. I wouldn't call it crazy. Though I think on my side, I could be a bit more cautious by accepting the challenge and trying to work out conditions that would be more favorable for a human opponent in this match. But as I explained in the book, for me, it was part of the greater picture. It's a challenge that I couldn't duck because I thought, look, it was a great opportunity to face I wouldn't call it AI, but a new type of a player, a silicon player, and having a choice between facing the machine, not on the most favorable odds, or ducking the challenge. I had no doubt that I would go for former. Though again, analyzing the way these two matches took place and the development of the whole story. Today, trying to be as impartial as I could be, I could point out to several mistakes that I made by accepting the challenge and rushing into the battle without appropriate preparation.
Well, I mean, like you say in the book that IBM actually hired people who spoke Russian to spy on you. They were security guards kind of standing outside your door, eavesdropping on your strategy conversations. I mean, I had no idea anything like that was going on.
Look, by the way, I also had no idea that was going on. In my book, I refer to the comments made 10 years later by one of the grandmasters, a Spanish grandmaster, Miguel Lescas, who was hired by IBM to help the machine. And his interview, I think it was even 12 years after the match in 1997. This interview was quite revealing, telling us about means and tools that have been used by IBM team to secure the best result.
Yeah. I also thought it was striking how much you say that the media coverage was sort of sensationalized and inaccurate. You talk about Nate Silver had this chapter in his book, The Signal and the Noise, that just really sort of misrepresented what happened.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's when we look at the scientific side, and when I say scientific, is both the way machine played and also the quality of the chess moves. There was so much a thick fog of mythology and simple mistakes and misrepresentations that I thought it would be necessary at one point. Okay, it took 20 years from me at one point to go through all these mistakes and fake stories to restore the truth. Again, it's not about questioning the result of the match. It's not about sounding like a sore loser, though I accept in the book and I repeated a few times that I was and I still is a sore loser. But the whole story about this game one, in this presented by Nate Silver, is nothing to do with reality, and it contained both chess and computer mistakes in explaining the reasons for the final mistake made by Deep Blue, where position was completely lost anyway.
Right. So, I mean, the way he tells it is that the machine made this really inexplicable move and that kind of threw you off and, put you off your game for the next few matches. And you say that that's just completely not true.
Absolutely not. No, the moment machine made this move, the game was already lost. It could take 5 moves, it could take 1 move, but in a few moves the game would be over. And making this move was equal of throwing the white towel. But again, as I say, if you look at this game, and by the way, at all other games of the match, using modern technology of the chess engines and on your laptop, I mean, you will see that the most sophisticated chess engines today, they will see the end even few moves before this mistake was made. It was very clear that the machine was going down, and this mistake, whatever was the cause of this mistake, had nothing to do with the result, and definitely I paid no serious attention to this final. I wouldn't call it a blunder or mistake, because again, it's the game wouldn't last for too long, even without this move.
Do you know if Nate Silver is aware that that's inaccurate, and if there's been any attempt to correct that? Because you say all these news outlets, including Time and Wired, have repeated that story.
Look, that's why I wrote the book, and I'm quite happy to just go over this story with him or with whoever, and just to explain that it was absolute nonsense from the computer point of view. And again, I would like to go back to the point I made a couple of minutes ago about modern technology, chess engines like Stockfish and Commodore. I think many people do not recognize the simple fact that the free chess app on your mobile phone today is probably stronger than Deep Blue. And of course, when we talk about the specialized chess engine on dedicated hardware, they are much, much, much stronger. I mean, there's no comparison. So that's why if you want to analyze the games of this match, you can simply use this chess engine that can be installed on your laptop, and you'll just realize that while I made tons of mistakes, I mean, Deep Blue game was, I would say, very far from perfect.
Right. And I think it's so interesting because you say after this match with Deep Blue, you got interested in the idea of what if a human were to team up with a computer to take on a computer? You call that advanced chess. Could you tell us about that?
Yes. Again, it was quite natural, So after licking my wounds, I had to think about the future. Though I wasn't sure at all that the game, human versus machine, was over, but I knew it would be it would end in a foreseeable future. I played 2 more matches with strong chess engines in 2003 with the German chess engine Fritz and Israeli chess engine Junior. Those matches ended as a tie, so 2-2 and 3-3. But that was almost the end of this competition, and later, a couple of years later, Vladimir Kramnik, who was my successor as a world champion, he lost to this German engine, Fritz, and it was over. Mickey Adams, the strongest British player at the time, was crushed by another computer called Hydra. So by 2005, 2006, the competition was over, and I could foresee it in 1997, 1998, thinking about my loss and looking for an opportunity to turn this painful but useful experience into something that could benefit not only chess players but potentially all other researchers.
Right. And now I'm not a good chess player. I mean, like I was in chess club and stuff like that, but I'm at a very low level where I would even make a move and then someone on the next turn would capture my queen or something, and I'd just say, "Oh, I can see that. That was pretty stupid." But you say, I mean, but there was always sort of a feeling of unfairness with that, where it's like, "Oh, well, wait, I just didn't see that one thing," and I'm trying to focus on the overall strategy. And you say that when you're playing with a computer, that's what it's like, that the computer will prevent you from making any stupid blunders. It'll prevent you from not seeing things like that.
Oh, I know. It's not just about stupid blunders. I mean, machine can secure your game from making serious mistakes, even at grandmaster level. But The trick is that it's not simply bringing human and machine together, because at the end of the day, it's for human to make a decision whether you want to switch on a computer mode, or you just want to be advised by the machine, or you want to provide assistance for the machine. So it's about the right combination. It's about the right balance. And in 1998, when I first introduced this, machines were good. Well, we're talking about chess engines, but they were not that good to dominate the game. Today, the situation is reversed. The strongest chess engines, they are much stronger than the current world champions. So the gap between Stockfish or Commodore or Houdini leading chess engines and Magnus Carlsen, the Norwegian world chess champion, is the same as between Magnus Carlsen and a player from an international open tournament. So there's no point of competing against the machines, and obviously bringing humans and machines together means that humans will have to look for machines' deficiencies, and the territory where humans can make valuable contribution has been shrinking rapidly. But having said so, it doesn't mean that human contribution is irrelevant. I still think that machines are struggling with flexibility. Machines, they know the odds, but I think it's applying the previously acquired knowledge to a specific situation may take time, and machine could be wrong. So the trick is that by bringing humans and machines together, now we're talking about chess and any other activity where human-machine collaboration could be useful. It's about finding the right person, not necessarily the best player, the best talent, but someone who understands the machine and someone who could guarantee that the combined performance will be as close to 100% as possible.
Right. I mean, I thought that was so interesting that the best players are not necessarily the best, machine collaborators.
Absolutely not. It's just, to the contrary, it could be counterproductive, because the best players, they used to play their own game. So even recognizing the fact that machine is much stronger today, and in most of the cases you should rely on machine's judgment. For a top player, world champion, and other players who are close to him by strength, it will be psychologically difficult, very challenging, almost impossible to recognize this fact during the game when the emotions are running high. So that's why you should find this golden, golden balance of a good player, a decent player who understands how to play, but at the same time who will know exactly what are the requirements of this very machine to make sure that the problems that machines still cannot solve, and I am saying it could be ranging from 10 to 2% of the territory where machine is not perfect. So I would rather say it's probably 10 now. But how to make sure that these problems can be solved by very gentle human interference. And again, chess is a perfect field to test this collaboration. But I think the real effect that could help the humanity goes way beyond black and white board.
Right, because you say that if people are considering a career for the future, being someone who shepherds AIs to accomplish tasks would be a good field to go into.
Absolutely, I think there will be many more new jobs created in the nearest future that will require very unique understanding of the way machines work. I don't think that machines will ever get to 100% perfection. I think this is something that this is the thought that is tormenting the public, because people believe that one day all these nightmares from Hollywood movies, all these dystopian visions of the future could materialize, and machines will make us redundant. But I think it's not about machines being perfect, but it's about machines doing things better than humans, which means still there will be certain imperfection, and in every specific task, for every specific machine, in every specific field, you will need those experts that will fit perfectly the remaining part of the problem. So whatever is not covered by the machine's intelligence will require human contribution. And again, it's not universal, because I say every task in every field with every different computer will require very, very unique understanding from the human collaborator.
I mean, if someone wants to gain that sort of understanding and go into one of those fields, is there a career path laid out? Are there classes you can take or degrees you can get that would be useful for that?
I don't think we're yet there, because I think it's just people are just they either are scared of thinking about this future, or they believe that it will fix itself. And I've been preaching for the last couple of years the beginning of the era of human-machine collaboration, and I think we're yet to enter the era of machines that will be a perfect fit for humans to work together. I'm talking about machines that will generate its own data. So machines that will generate their own knowledge based on the rules provided by humans or by the framework. So machines that will be able to collect its own data, actually generate its own data, and the human role will be analyzing it and just building the strategy. Because right now, even the most sophisticated computers, when you look, when I'd say IBM's Watson, they're mistakenly called AI, but we're still talking about machines that are doing nothing else but data crunching. Very fast, very sophisticated, yes, but we are just seeing the beginning of a new era, and I believe that'll be connected with programs like AlphaZero, developed by that Google team, DeepMind team, led by Demis Hassabis. And that's the beginning of the new, I would say, a dawn in these human-machine relations, since we are now looking for a unique opportunity to generate knowledge based on the framework that we define.
Well, and you suggest that we might be reaching a point of diminishing returns with how good computers are with these machine learning applications, because they all work by basically saying to the computer, here's 1 billion examples of what I want you to do that. And increasing that to here's 1 trillion examples of what I want you to do might not make the machine that much better.
Yes, absolutely. It's the mistake. Another mistake that is made now by the general public and even by some experts is that they pretend that the information that machine can generate in a closed system could be automatically transferred into open-ended system. And I see no connection. I see no shred of evidence that we are coming close to so-called AGI. So we're not even close to the moment where machines will be able to actually divide the open-ended space into the manageable problems. It's unless you have human guidance, machines will never recognize the moment when they cross the boundaries of diminishing returns.
Right. And you talk in the book about how you have just very smart, prominent people like Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk and Nick Bostrom talking about fears of killer robots and AI taking over. Could you talk about sort of your disagreements with them, and have you had conversations with them about that?
No, I didn't. Actually, with Nick Bostrom, yes, I did. But again, it's being doomsayer is a good business. It's people somehow they are fascinated by this dystopian vision of the future. But I'm just looking at the facts and at the latest development of the machines, and I would rather rely on people like Demis Hassabis, a very good friend, man behind the AlphaZero program, and other people who are at the cutting edge of computer technology and who are not seeing any real threat for the humanity. It's not about extinction of humanity. It's about promotion of human brains. And I see no reason of entering this useless debates, because at the end of the day, we have to deal with revolutionary technology as we did many times for many centuries in the past. Crying wolf doesn't change the parameters of the problem, and even if you assume that there's the glimpse of truth in these dystopian predictions, it doesn't change our position as humans. We just have to find the best way to work with these technologies, because it's not just the future; it's happening now, and we can look back at 20th or 19th century, or even earlier, and to see how many times great minds predicted the end of humanity and unemployment and starvation, because technology would make people make working hands redundant.
Right. I think this book does such a good job of making clear what the limitations of these systems are, because I think people just see a computer win at chess or win at Jeopardy, and they just think, oh my God, it's a genius. And I think your book does. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but exactly. But it's a closed system. Chess, God, whatever, Jeopardy. Those are the systems where the rules and the frameworks have been defined by humans. And thinking that that machine that dominated the field. And by the way, we're talking about specific machines dominating specific fields. So moving into the open-ended system and solving all problems for us, it's a fallacy. And again, these are the shred of evidence that is happening now. And I think that in the next few years, people will, I wouldn't say they will be disappointed, but I think they will be quite disillusioned about machines' ability to change our lives instantly for better or for worse on their own.
Right. And you talk about what you think the danger of these AI systems is much more mundane stuff. You talk about rising inequality and sort of biases that are hard-coded into the algorithms and things like that.
Yes, I think we should talk about real practical issues. And we should recognize that technology brings both good and bad. And I always say that technology is a prime reason why so many people are still alive, to complain about technology. Yeah. So we live in a world where, even without us recognizing it, our lives are getting better every day because of technology. So we live longer, we have better diet, we can travel safer. I mean, there's so many things that we owe to technology. But the counter effect is that because we live longer and technology is getting more sophisticated, then there's this disparity between the new jobs that are available and the age of people that will be looking for the jobs, because now at age 50, 60, even 70, people feel strong enough just to compete. But they have to compete with younger people that have very natural ability to operate with the systems. So technology creates this balance, this disparity, and we just have to recognize it's going to happen. Because at the same time, we when we complain about our data, private data being allocated, most of us willingly share the data, whether with Amazon or with Apple or with Google or with you name it. And I think it's something that will be the greatest challenge for human race, is how to actually strike this balance, a very delicate balance between technology working for our favors, convenience and benefit, and on the other side, loss of our privacy, because for the most effective services provided by the government or multinational corporations, you have to share more data. Again, we want more data to be protected, our data, but at the same time, we want better services and more, without thinking that our privacy is actually a currency that we pay for this improvement, steady improvement. And another problem, which I think it could be even it's more challenging, and that could lead to many dire situations. It's about bad players, because right now we're talking about problems in the free world. You're talking about multinational corporations that's still operating under American and European laws, and you can definitely look for the practices, and you can find them, as recently happened with Google by European Union, as Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, and they will have to play the ball because they've been generating most of their profits, and they thrive under the rules of the free world. But when you look at the other side of the world, unfree world, then you have very powerful players that don't care about the rules, whether it's Chinese dictatorship, whether it's Putin, whether it's Kim Jong-un, Iranian mullahs, or some quasi-state operations. They're always looking for an opportunity to break through and to steal the data and just to do us harm, either for political or for economic reasons. And in the world of the globalization, that's, in my view, creates the biggest challenge for us, since we cannot sit on this information. We cannot protect the technology, preserving it in our part of the world without sharing with the rest of the planet. And I always say that capacity for evil is still uniquely human.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you hear about this things going on in China right now where apparently they want to give every person a sort of a social media score, and if you cause problems, your score goes down and you have trouble getting jobs and things like that.
Yeah, that's the worst nightmare of someone in the free world. But that tells you that the data collection by Google that might be unpleasant, or it's not the same as data collection by Chinese security or KGB. So it's very important for us to understand that right now we have to look at this dilemma. We have to look at this problem instead of wasting our time talking about killer robots and about the Terminators and Matrix and some distant future threats that may never materialize. Since the data is being collected, and even if the data, our personal data, is protected by the law of the land, whether it's in the UK or the US or in continental Europe, it's still collected somewhere, and even the most secure storage of data can be hacked, as we know, and this data can be potentially stolen. Or it could be misused even by the legitimate players for some benefits. So we know the story about Cambridge Analytica, for instance, and how this data influence the results of U.S. presidential elections. So that's why I believe that it's our prime task of those who live in the free world is to make sure that the rules that are imposed on the multinational corporations that have access to this data, they will include the most severe punishment for any infringement of our privacy and for any distribution of this data for malign intents.
Well, you mentioned Putin, and I said that I read your book, Winter is Coming, and that title obviously is drawn from George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones. So I was just curious, could you talk about reading those books and why you wanted to take that phrase from there for the title of your book?
As you can guess, I'm a big fan, so I read books. I'm watching the movie, and I had recently a great experience touring some of the spots when they were shooting in Belfast, taking my wife and my daughter, also big fans of the show, when I just had a book, actually a book proposal, I was thinking about the title, and you as you know, it takes 10 tries with any publisher before you can agree on the title. And it was the first time in my life when they looked at the title, Winter is Coming. They asked me, so why? And I said, there are two reasons. One is it's obviously it's resemblance with a famous show. It's a motto of the House of Stark, but I wanted to emphasize that the history is not linear. Somehow it's the delayed response to Fukuyama's 1992 best-selling book, The End of History. history doesn't end. The evil doesn't disappear, and it's seasonal. So it's to demonstrate that winter is coming, and we just have to make sure that we know that the cold season just is about to begin. But the second reason is it's because, as in the book, the winter is not just climate change. This winter it's man-made because people were not ready for the challenge. That for evil that were coming from the north, and we just have to make sure that we are prepared for the challenge, because the damage caused by this geopolitical winter will depend very much on our ability or inability to make ourselves ready to defend the values of the free world. And it took about 10 or 15 minutes, and they said yes, great. They accepted it. Funny enough, there was more debate about the subtitle of the book, Why Vladimir Putin and the Enemies of the Free World Must Be Stopped. And the arguments from the publisher was, look, it reminds people of the Cold War. And I said, yes, it's a Cold War because winter's coming. And they were still reluctant because it was somehow they raised some resemblance with the worst moments of the Cold War, and they thought some people could feel uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, they accepted even the subtitle. And ironically enough, today when the book is presented, everybody quotes the subtitle, because after 2016 elections in America and many other things that happened in Europe, including Brexit, people had no doubt why Vladimir Putin and enemies of the free world must be stopped.
Absolutely. I mean, in the acknowledgments, you say that Putin is a lot like Tywin Lannister. Could you elaborate on what those parallels are?
Look, I was forced to actually make some parallels, and that's why I even had a little exercise on my Twitter comparing some of the quotes from Putin and Tywin Lannister, mixing them, and asked people to get an educated guess. I would still value Tywin Lannister as more capable organizer, because he fought some very tough battles. And he was not given sort of such an easy start as Putin. Though there were clear parallels with the way they treated their enemies and the treaties that they signed.
I mean, one parallel that strikes me is that Putin, you say, is perhaps the wealthiest person in the world, sort of like Tywin Lannister.
Yes, I think that's. If we go back to the book, yes, Tywin Lannister was very rich. Lannisters were the richest, but Tyrells were close. I don't think anybody is even close to Putin by the amount of money this person or group of people can move around. The only difference is that between Putin and the richest man in the world. Is that his wealth is tied to his staying power. Right now, he can move hundreds of billions of dollars from Russian budget, hard currency reserves, and the fortunes of the oligarchs that owe him everything. So that's why, again, it could be probably amount close to $1 trillion. No one on the planet can come on close by exercising the same control of the similar amount of cash or assets. But Putin's ability to be this wealthiest man, it's directly connected to his control of Russian state and his ability to cause problems around the world, and he knows that. So there's no way for him to retire. So Tywin Lannister probably had a chance of retirement, though at certain point after you eliminate so many of your enemies and some of your friends in the process, it's very difficult to find refuge.
Well, and you say that, yeah, that this is one weakness of Putin and his oligarchs is that so much of their money is held in Europe and America and could potentially be subject to confiscation or something. Sort of like it could be like the Iron Bank of Bravos kind of coming down on the Lannisters, you know?
Yeah, we don't have an Iron Bank, so as a World Bank doesn't qualify to this role. Look, Putin, I'm sure in the future, this 20 years of Putin rule, hopefully it will not last too much longer, will be started as quite a unique covert operation by intelligence that had no parallel in history. Because we have to admit that, he succeeded in infiltrating Western, when I say Western, it's the free world, political, financial, and business structures, and also infiltrated the social fabric of the free world. The Putin's propaganda machine made most successful inroads into the minds of ordinary people in the free world, whether it's in America or in Europe, because unlike communist propaganda, Putin succeeded in selling a picture that people can absorb easily. He's not there to tell you that this is the right ideology, the only one that you have to believe. I call him the merchant of doubt. So he's selling doubts. He's basically he's not trying to defend one view or another. He wants to destroy the very concept of truth. There is no truth. There are no values. We bad. Everybody's bad. Everybody's corrupt. No political alliances. They're based on goodwill and just for the idea of greater good. It's all about me today, you tomorrow. So, and it's just we fight, we make alliances. So it's a total chaos. So chaos is the best atmosphere where he can thrive, because dictators, they're always far more capable in moving into chaos, since they don't have to bother about parliament's approval, public polling, media criticism. So they can make instant decisions. And in the situation of chaos where traditional institutions, both domestic and international, are weakened or destroyed, they immediately have an upper hand.
I want to run this by you because I was talking to my girlfriend about whether Putin is the most like Tywin Lannister, and we sort of agreed that today he's the most like Tywin Lannister, but it seems like maybe when he started out, he was more like Littlefinger or Varys, in the sense that he sort of, like Littlefinger, he kind of masked his true ambitions and pretended to be useful to people who were more powerful than him until he had his chance to advance his own interests. And then obviously he's like Varys, that he ran this spy network and sort of knew everyone's secrets.
Yeah, actually, the Littlefinger comparison is brilliant. I have to say that that's exactly what he did by trying to make friends with Bush 43, with other leaders of the foreign world, while just investigating. So what would be his options to move forward? He was very cautious in the first few years of his presidency, trying to recognize how far he could go. And at one point, he discovered that he could go very far because the free world showed no resilience to his tempting offers.
But you don't think? What do you think of the Varys comparison? You don't think that's as apt?
No, Varys comparison is tempting because Varys was running local KGB in Westeros. But Varys was, I think, he was a spy master who had his ear to the ground. So he was receiving reports, collecting data, and of course submitting it to his superior. But I like Littlefinger comparison much more because Littlefinger was engaged in conversations with top players. And he was very good in actually finding the weaknesses and ways to get under their skin and just to make them comfortable by talking to him. And that's exactly what I think Putin did at the early years of his presidency. He was very good in just recognizing the the psychological profile of his counterparts, and it's a classic story of 2001 meeting in Slovenia, where he just he charmed President Bush, who later said that he looked at Putin's eyes and saw his soul.
Right, and you really lay out very vividly in this book, and I would encourage everyone to go read it, just how Putin has played American leaders just for decades. And if you'll forgive me another sort of fantasy comparison, but I kept thinking while I was reading this book of the line from The Two Towers, where King Theoden says, "I would not risk open war," and Aragorn replies, "Open war is upon you, whether you would risk it or not." I just kept thinking of that reading this book.
Yeah, we can look for sci-fi, we can look for classical literature, we can look for our history of the 20th century. There's certain lessons of the recent history that we keep forgetting. That you cannot outlive a dictator. As long as he eliminates all the opposition inside his own country, he'll be looking outside. So the outward aggression is inevitable if he has enough military and economic potential to cause harm for neighbors, because he will need to justify his endless term power. And I've been saying for years that while Vladimir Putin was our problem in Russia, it will be everybody's problem. And I have to say that for many years I feel like shouting in a desert. And many Americans until 2016, they almost laughed at my assumption that one day Putin would attack America in the heart of its democracy. I remember my appearance at Bill Maher's show on HBO in May 2015, and when I talked about threats coming from Putin, he said it was almost verbatim, "Wake me up when he takes over Poland." And I said, I jumped on my chair, said, that's almost exactly what we heard from Chamberlain in 1938. And it took 2016 elections for many Americans who share this point of view, including Bill Maher himself, to change their views and blasting Putin for interference. And of course, I responded on my Twitter, teasing him, and said that it seemed that Putin decided to skip over Poland and went straight to Wisconsin.
Yeah, well, no, I think you definitely must feel pretty vindicated by subsequent events, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know, David, but it feels good. It feels great, to be right and to look at people saying, "I told you so, I told you so." But for the sake of my country, Russia, for the sake of the free world, for the sake of humanity, I want to be proven wrong. I want to see some political will just to oppose Putin's and other dictators, and just to find some sort of an algorithm that will help us to recognize that it's time to close the gaps between different ideological straits in the free world, and to recognize that the very foundation of the free world, the liberal democracy and free markets, under vicious attacks that have been funded and initiated by those who are one or another working with Vladimir Putin. Because unlike Soviet leaders, he is not confined to work with the far left. He's quite comfortable working with far left or far right, whoever is doing the best job by destroying the status quo. And ideally, he would like to see the divide between the two wings of the politics, having nationalists on one side and socialists on the other side. And it seems that the political life in America now is rapidly moving in this direction.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, as a fantasy fan, this line from your book jumped out at me. You say, cases like this are why Russians and other people living under totalitarian regimes do not see the writings of Gogol, Kafka, and Bulgakov as fantasy or even surrealism. Could you just talk about, like, are there particular works by those authors that you think Americans should read to understand the nature of what we're dealing with now?
Yeah, but it's we can continue the list of authors, and I think that maybe speaking to many Americans, even those who were who were well educated, who read George Orwell, and they still had difficulty recognizing that it's not just a dystopia from a distant future. This is more or less was the accurate description of the lives of people who lived and unfortunately still live under dictatorships. Only today in America we could see people just recognizing the potential threat to democratic institutions and complaining about dictatorial tendencies in the White House. And it's still difficult to explain to them that while there are problems in America that I believe can be solved through the normal democratic process in the elections, in many countries, and we're talking about probably 4 billion people, or if not more, living in unfree states, ordinary citizens, they have no tools, no opportunities to change the government without violent means.
Yeah. And again, I would just really strongly recommend everyone to read this book, Winter is Coming, because it explains these things so well. I want to ask you too. I mean, speaking
it's a personal experience. You know, I live in America now and I travel around the world. Unfortunately, I can no longer visit my country, Russia, because it will be one way ticket, and I always buy a round trip. But now, it's just recognizing that in the world where the information travels instantaneously, where you can learn about a tragedy in a cave in Thailand, or an earthquake in South America, or another disaster in Europe or in Africa. So you cannot pretend that you have your own world that will not be infiltrated by the influence coming from the bad guys. So defending democracy, defending human rights outside of the perimeter of the free world, it's mandatory, because if you don't do that, the opposite forces will cross the boundaries. It's as you just said, we are at war. You like it or not, call it a hybrid war, call it a new Cold War, whatever it is. We are under permanent assault from the forces that view democracy and human rights and all the core values of the free world as the imminent threat to their very existence.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, I wanted to recommend some science fiction to you if you haven't read it, but there's a story by George R. R. Martin called Unsound Variation, which is a time travel story about chess, which is really, really good. And there's Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, good. Yeah, just always happy to have an advice to read a good book.
Yeah, and then there's a novel by the Scottish author Ian M. Banks called Player of Games, where it's about there's an alien civilization and they determine their ruler, and it's a very totalitarian, autocratic, evil alien civilization, but they determine their leader by playing a chess type game, and so someone who's really good at that game goes in to try to improve the society by beating their king at this chess type game. And I just thought if you haven't read that, you should definitely check it out.
Mm. Okay.
And then I thought it was interesting in the book you mentioned the story by Isaac Asimov, The Feeling of Power. And my fourth grade teacher read this to us when I was a kid. I just love this story. I've never heard anyone else ever really talk about it, but I just love this story. Could you just talk about why you wanted to mention it in your book?
Yeah, and I thought it would be, again, I thought it would be appropriate parallel, again, just to it's of course it's an exaggeration as every sci-fi, but I think it had a grain of truth into the human-machine relations.
Right. So the premise of the story is that it's in the future and computers do all the math, to the extent that humans have forgotten that it's even possible to do math without a computer, and they just take the the answers that the machine spits out as oracular and incomprehensible. And someone has actually figured out that it's possible to do arithmetic just on a piece of paper yourself. And this is sort of a revelation to the society.
Yes, but I think that's important that, that it's the whole idea that it's the two civilizations that faced each other are using computers. They were on stalemate. They couldn't win the war because machines always could predict the moves from both sides. And this human intervention, so the little extra that looked insignificant, still could actually have a decisive effect, because even the tiny contribution, so tiny change of an angle at such massive power could dramatically change the impact of your hit. And I thought it would be a very good demonstration of ability of humans, even if they look unprepared to deal with this massive computer power. Still, the human factor could make a decisive difference.
And do you think, it seems like the story really says a lot about the dangers of people just mindlessly parroting what the computer says because the computer is always right and not thinking for themselves at all?
Yeah, that's what I saw in young chess players, working with them under the auspices of Kasparov Chess Foundation. So for many years, I've been seeing the best players, mainly in the U.S., young players, and I could see them making the same mistake, which is probably not a mistake, but it's just it's the way they actually see the world. Is that they used to work with computers to collect data from computers, and when they analyze the games and they present their analysis, they always rely on the machine's assessment. And I always try to take them sort of away from this route, asking questions about the reasons why certain moves are not good or good ones. And quite often they simply don't understand the question, because they used to look at the computer screen, and if machine says it's good, it's good. So why should we think about the roots of this evaluation? What was the cause of this change in the position? And I think it's a mistake that is being made not only in chess, but all over the place, whether it's in education or in business. I think people some are being enslaved by machines. Our minds being hijacked because we just look at the screen and we don't recognize that for us to make the difference, going back to the Asimov story, it's very important to actually stop collecting data and make a decision. It's psychologically it's very difficult, because you think, I would rather collect more data, but that's everybody can do. We have the same access to the same data. It's the difference could be in split of a second, moving your finger or your mouse. But the real difference could be made by adding human emphasis to the equation.
There was a recent documentary by Werner Herzog called Lo and Behold about technology, and there's a funny story in there where he talks about this girl who she would go to visit her boyfriend who lived 10 minutes away, and she would always follow her phone, the driving directions on her phone to get to his apartment. And then at one point her phone died or broke or something, and she realized that she couldn't find her boyfriend's apartment, even though it was only 10 minutes away, and she had driven there dozens of times, whatever. Without the phone, and she so outsourced that knowledge that it was just not in her brain at all.
Mm. Look, again, it's just I think this kind of stories they can scare people off, because that's that may help them visualizing sort of the doomsaying scenarios. But I treat these kind of stories as and predictions as something that might happen, may not happen, but at the end of the day, so we just have to recognize that every revolutionary breakthrough in technology or in our social life carries unpredictable consequences. And trying to predict these unpredictable consequences is counterproductive.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a pretty rare occurrence, that thing, and I'm sure it all worked out in the end. I mean, she found her boyfriend in the end, I'm sure. So it's not worth panicking about.
But again, as there will be cases caused by the development of technology, and also by releasing some more and more potential of human mind and body. But I think it's just trying to pick up certain unique cases and try to just to put them as the dire warning for the future of humanity is not a productive way of discussing our future.
Yeah. Okay, so we're all out of time. So do you want to just do you have any other final thoughts, or are you working on any new books, or just anything you want to mention?
Look, I think eventually, yes, I'll come up with a new book. So probably take a year or two. I think it's time to start organizing my thoughts from the previous books, and just coming up with you may call it sort of the overall philosophy of the modern world. It's How Life Imitates Chess, my first book many years ago about decision making and strategy. Winter is coming, and deep thinking, and so the title I have in mind for the future book is The World of Fake Values. Hopefully it will be an attempt to sort of the bring together into one big picture the different traits of modern development, because I think trying to compartmentalize the problems, looking at technology separately from social issues, from financial, from political, it's not going to work. So we just have to recognize what did go wrong, why did it go wrong, and so what are the right moves for us to make to actually go back to the history of success of the free world, and so how we restore the spirit of exploration, pioneering spirit that helped us to build such a beautiful world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will definitely be looking forward to that, because I really enjoyed these two books, Deep Thinking and Winter is Coming, and they're by Garry Kasparov. And so, Garry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you for calling. Thank you.
And that was our interview. So big thanks again to Garry Kasparov for joining us on the show. Big thanks as well to everyone who's given us 5 stars on iTunes, including Lucas Widener, Jibby and Gadgetude in the US, Johnny Fever 79 in Canada, and Chris Wilson 45 and EE Customer 3366 in the UK. EE Customer 3366 writes, "Amazing. Without a doubt, one of my all-time favorite podcasts. David manages to get so much out of his guests, all of whom are fascinating and have wonderful stories to tell. If I could rate it more than 5 stars, I would. A must-listen for any geek." So big thanks again to EE Customer 3366 for that great review. And remember that Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please sign up to give us $1 or $2 per episode over at patreon.com/geeks. And if you'd rather make a one-time contribution, you can do that via check or PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. And so I want to give a special thank you to Rory Carroll, who just made a very generous contribution to the show via PayPal. So big thanks again to everyone who's contributed. We really appreciate it. All right, so that was our show. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is a production of Wired.com. For more information about the show, visit geeksguideshow.com. To learn more about your host, visit davidbarrkirtley.com. Music and voiceover produced by yours truly, Jack Kincaid. If you enjoyed this program, tell your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, tell no one. Thank you for listening.